Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today's guest is here to challenge something most people never question, how their brain actually works. George Haymaker is a neuroscience-based brain performance expert who helps high-performing professionals optimize how they think, feel, and operate without burning out. After more than 30 years as a successful entrepreneur, George reached a breaking point. Beneath the surface success were chronic anxiety, emotional strain, and a growing dependence on alcohol and pain medication. That collapse led him into deep study of neuroscience, neuroplasticity, and nervous system regulation, not just to understand what went wrong, but to rebuild from the inside out. Today, he helps others do the same, teaching people how to retrain the very system that drives their thoughts, behaviors, and performance. George, welcome to Thoughts at Last. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Wonderful. So, George, here on the Thought Atlas podcast, I and my listeners, we want to get to know our guests on a personal level. So, can you tell us more about yourself? What's your favorite color? What's your best food? What are some of your hobbies? That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Sure. I'll start with the fact that I have two lovely female dogs that mean the world to me. They're our daughters. I never had any human daughters, so I have
Wonderful.
two King Charles Cavalier Spaniels, and they mean the world to me, and I actually learn a lot more from them than they learn from me. Um,
Wow.
as far as food and all of that, I really try to orient my diet and nutrition around what's good for my brain. So
Yeah.
I have a regimen I follow pretty closely. The brain needs very specific raw materials for it to function well. And so I
Yes.
try to make sure that I'm consuming those throughout the day as I need them, because the brain doesn't have any storage tank for these raw materials. It needs to be fed a
Yeah.
continuous
Yeah.
supply.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of during the day, I do a lot of shakes and mixed uh, recipes where I'll have a healthy fat, protein, and complex carbohydrate all mixed
Yes.
together. My shakes have a bunch of stuff in it. So basically, I look to feed my brain first and foremost, and everything else takes care of itself.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Once again, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you for letting us get to know you better. It's a pleasure to have you. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So my first question for today, from the outside, your life looked successful, but internally things were different. Why do so many high performers struggle, beneath the surface?
I'm sorry, struggle with what?
Struggle beneath the
Oh,
surface.
yeah. I think it starts with the fact that they don't understand their brains, and that's not an accusation. It's just
Yeah.
my experience working with people, and also myself. I expected my brain to be there and perform. I didn't realize I had control over it, over its performance, and or the mental experience. And so I think that's true of a lot of people. We know a lot about a lot of other things, but we just don't believe that the brain is shapeable, designable, malleable. We just think it's fixed.
Yes.
And that's what I thought throughout my entire career until it took me to a really bad place and I had to change. And so I think it starts there. We don't receive any real education when we're young, unless we elect to take it, around neuroscience in the brain. And so we just kind of grow up accepting what is produced by our brain in terms of our mental experience. And that is just not a good strategy because we do have control. And if we took the time to learn about the brain and how to partner with it, we could do things intentionally with our lifestyle, in terms of training the brain, in terms of analyzing the signals that it's giving us, to really help it perform better, and then also to question the thoughts, the emotions, and behaviors that get constructed from our brain into our mental experience, our consciousness, and we could question
Yes.
those in terms of where they came from, why it was those thoughts, why it was those emotions and behaviors that were constructed, because they don't have to be those, and that's really the biggest point.
Yeah.
Is um, the brain works in such a way that it picks and chooses what to bring into our consciousness. And so if we understand that and we don't like it, then we can work to change it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that response and that clarification. Everything you just described about how plastic, the brain is and how it's easily malleable reminds me of an audiobook I was listening to one time where there was an old man who was, I think, around 70 years old or so. He had an incident where he sustained, no, he had a stroke actually. And because of that stroke, he could no longer speak or walk or basically, live a normal life. So he was, taken to the hospital where he was treated, and there was essentially the doctors felt there was nothing they could do. So there was this particular, should I call him a holistic kind of like practitioner or something of the sort, and he had this personal belief that the brain is plastic. He believed in neuroplasticity. So he essentially helped the man to kind of recover and get to a point where the man was now able to walk again, talk again, live a normal life. I actually found it, very fascinating. Imagine a part of the brain is literally dead. That part isn't functioning. And because of the fact that that part of the brain is gone, other parts have been affected. And essentially, this person has become kind of like incapacitated, if that's the correct way to say it. And and this man believed that, you can teach other parts of the brain to carry out the function of that part. This was his exact words that we actually don't need the brain isn't necessarily divided into different parts the way most neuroscientists think. Any part of the brain can perform the function of any other part of the brain. I was like, "Ah, okay, that's crazy." So essentially, that was how he described the whole concept of neuroplasticity. So, speaking with you kinds of like gives me an idea of and just reminded me of that story and just I'm just trying to understand how plastic the brain really is and just gives me an idea of how powerful our mind, our brain, how powerful it is, and the fact that we've not even been able to tap into its full potential. Anyways, my next question, you reached a point of burnout and addiction. What was that moment like when everything caught up with you?
Well, it was, you know, very
Yeah.
difficult. There was the physical pain that I was going through from addiction and
Yes.
withdrawing. But it's also the emotional and psychological pain because you realize that you're living a life that's meaningless and purposeless, and that you no longer are in control, and that something outside of you has control of you. And
Yes.
it's just also very deflating because, at the time I was 52 years of age and, obviously a grown
Wow.
man.
Yes.
And, it was sad that I had reached that point. And I saw it coming, I guess, because I knew that it was progressing. Addiction is very progressive. But I didn't know how to stop it. And I didn't, like, having never been through it before, I didn't know exactly where it was going to end up. Um, but it was very difficult sitting in rehab, wondering how my life had gotten to that point. Was that going to be the way I was going to die and leave the world, and was that what I was going to be known for, or was I
Yes.
going to try again and figure this out to live how to live life in a different way, and how was I going to help my brain get to that point? And so those were all
Yes.
unanswered unknowns, unanswered questions. I knew nothing about my brain. I just simply had to rely on hope um, while I was feeling miserable. And then I reached deep within me to my entrepreneurial spirit and said, I've overcome before in other ways. This is the biggest hurdle I'll ever face. But, I'm going to call upon those resources to help me with this challenge. And so it
Yes.
started just one day at a time and putting one foot in front of the other and being willing to leave behind every concept and thought and idea I had about how to live life and start accepting new ideas and new suggestions as to how to do it different. And so, you know, it was one day at a time, as they say
Yeah.
in recovery, and that's what
Yes,
it's been.
definitely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Honestly, I can't even begin to imagine, what that journey must have been like for you. But the fact that, you were able to get yourself out of that situation through sheer effort and, sheer will is actually very wonderful and inspiring. And I'm glad that I'm speaking with you today, a different person, away from you've done away with that life and it's all over, and that's just wonderful. Now, you now teach that our brain is driving our thoughts and behaviors. What is the biggest misconception people have about how our mind works?
Well, it's the brain is actually constructing our mental experience. So all forms of it, our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, and I'm not sure people actually understand. A lot of people don't understand how the mind actually, or the brain actually picks and chooses what thoughts, what emotions, and what behaviors to construct. They just appear right in our consciousness, those things, but we don't know how they got there, and we don't understand that there's a reason that it's those thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and we don't know that we can change them if we don't want them. And so I think that that's probably the biggest misconception is we do have full control over what thoughts, what emotions, and what behaviors get constructed by the brain into our mental experience. And if we don't
Wow.
like it, what's happening now in certain contexts, we can recreate them, redesign them, re-architect them. So I guess that would be my answer.
So, so how do we then, exercise this control that we have? Can you give us some techniques we could use or some methodologies?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to just recognize that when thoughts, emotions, behaviors arise, that we can
Yes.
question them. We don't have to accept them as they are. And that's step one. So the process would be to look at our brains differently, to look at them more objectively, to not accept everything that comes into our mental experience as it has to be or that it's a fact. I mean, it's a fact that it's happening, but
Yes.
we don't have to accept it that that's what they have to be. And so we can analyze our mental experience objectively, understand how those things came to be, because now we understand how the brain constructs them. And then we can question them, are they helpful or not? And if they're not, then we can figure out what we want to do about them. What different thoughts, emotions, or behaviors would we prefer instead that might work better to meet our needs, that would cause less friction, emotional reactivity, and that would, allow our brain to perform better. Because I think a lot of us
Yes.
recognize that when we have negativities passing through our mind, um, it's very resource intensive, right? Um,
Yeah.
we're spending energy and other resources on processing unhelpful experiences, and so that those tend to be more resource intensive. They require more energy than more pleasant thoughts, emotions, and behavior. So it's very much like, if you're revving your car, it's going to consume more gas, and that's what's happening in our brains when we have
Yes.
friction-filled, unpleasant experiences. They consume more resources, and the more resources that are consumed for unhelpful things means there's less for the things that we really want to apply our resources to. And so the brain is
Yes.
really just this resource tank that we need to fill every day through appropriate lifestyle, diet, nutrition, exercise, sleep, periodic respites, um, so that we can recharge the systems, allow them to catch up, etc. So we can actually take steps to appropriately fill the brain with those resources, and then we can watch very carefully how we spend those resources. And so when we have negative experiences, mental experiences, we need to
Yes.
question them and say, you know something, I'm not enjoying these experiences. They're not helpful,
Yes.
and they're consuming resources at an accelerated rate and
Yes.
leaving me with less to do what I really want to do. And so it can be this analytical, strategic approach to our brain and our mental experience that instead of being overwhelmed by it all and succumbing to it, we can actually be more strategic with it.
Honestly, I love this explanation you gave. Now, first off, the first thing I understand about this is it requires a certain level of self-awareness. If you're not self-aware, you definitely cannot do this. Also, another method that you can use to go about this is think about it. You feel a certain way, you feel a certain way. Maybe it's a kind of a negative emotion you're experiencing. And the funny thing, if you continue to dwell in that negative state, it eventually leads to what? Burnout. This is how the burnout actually happens. When you use up all your resources worrying about something that you necessarily cannot do anything about, the negative emotion in question. What happens then? When the time comes for you to do something that's actually productive, there's no resources left anymore. You burnt it up on something that doesn't matter, something that you have no control over. Honestly, thank you so much for this, this explanation you gave. It's actually incredibly wonderful, and I love it so. I love the fact that you used resources, which is actually the truth. Your brain using resources. I remember the time I had a very difficult paper, an exam. I think it was a mechanical course because back then in the university, and I remember studying for this course. Right, I can tell you for a fact that I go to the gym, I work out. The amount of energy I burnt studying for this course, I don't think the calories I burned that night before the exam, I don't think you can compare it to the amount of calories I burned at the gym. I found myself sweating. I was perspiring so hard. I was like, what's happening? I'm not lifting any weights. Where am I? So you can imagine your brain requires a lot of energy. Now imagine when you're worrying and when you're thinking or when you're trying to, when you're experiencing negative emotions. And what I've noticed most of the time is we human beings, when we usually worry about things, it's about things that we cannot control. Because if it's definitely you wouldn't worry about something you can control. And as the great Greek philosopher, I can't remember his name, as he had said, focus on the controllables, ignore the things you cannot control. In essence, as you've explained to us, manage your resources. Do not waste your resources on things that is not in your control. Use your resources on the things that you can control. And I think I may be, gearing off topic, but let me just say this before we continue. I've noticed in life that almost everything can be taken away from you except your mind. They can take your arm, can take one of your legs, but the only way to take your mind is essentially to end your life. So your mind is the one thing you actually own. So why would you intentionally be wasting that resource or using it for something that's unproductive? Thank you so much for this clarification. I really, really do appreciate it. Thank you so much, George. So let's move on to the next question. Before I move on, do you have anything you might want to add?
Yes, and this is a very important part because when something, it's one thing to say we shouldn't waste energy on unhelpful or worry or other thoughts or emotions, right? It's one thing to say that.
Yes.
The problem is that the brain has learned through repetition that these particular thoughts and emotions that it is bringing forward into your mind are the ones that work best for that situation. And
Oh,
so
wow.
the problem is the brain has now patterned itself to reach for those thoughts and emotions when it encounters this particular context. Okay? So
Mm,
you can sit there and say, not you, but I'm talking in general to of anyone,
mm,
um, I don't like these thoughts and emotions because they're wasting energy, resources.
yes.
The problem is the brain will keep bringing them up over and over again in this context.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Unless we understand how the brain works and we give it something different for it to predict instead. So, in other words, we need to give the brain another alternative that we would prefer and then teach the brain this new pattern, how to think, how to feel in that context. We need to introduce it to it. It's very much like um, when you take your child to swim for the first time,
Yes,
you bring it to the edge of the pool and it's never seen a pool before and it's scared of the pool. The brain is
yes,
interpreting that this could be a threat because the brain has never
yes,
seen it before. And
yes,
but once you introduce the child to the pool, put its feet in the water on the first step, and give it gradual, gentle exposure to this new thing, you can see the fear, the threat drain out of the child's eyes. The brain is
yes.
suddenly accepting that maybe this isn't as threatening as it thought, and maybe it's actually fun. Okay,
Oh,
and
wow.
so
Yes,
and so we have now taught the child through exposure and evidence that this new thing is actually helpful and good. So that's what we need to do when we have an unhelpful thought or emotion is we can't just say, you know something, I don't like you, stop it, because the
yes,
brain won't stop it. Because the brain just simply works on here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm hearing and smelling and feeling. This is what my senses are telling me. This is the thought and emotion I should bring forward in that context. Until we teach it something different and convince the brain that this new thing, this new way of thinking and feeling is more ideal, more helpful, safer, lower cost, resource wise, more rewarding.
yes.
Okay? So
Oh,
we can
yes.
never just say, I don't want that. We have to put something else in its place.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for that clarification, George. That was wonderful. I'm going to keep that in mind. And if you're listening, please note that I hope you guys are with your notes because George is definitely educating us on a lot of stuff. So please pick up your pen and your jotter and write down. So, George, you mentioned our nervous system was conditioned for survival. Sorry, you mentioned your nervous system was conditioned for survival. And how does that affect how people perform in everyday life?
Yeah. So one of the things that we need to understand about the brain is it was designed hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Yes,
There were no cell phones. There there were no mansions.
definitely.
There was no social media. There's none of those.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so that brain's design was built for survival. That is the most important job that the brain feels like it has. And that hasn't changed in hundreds of thousands of years. The need to survive and continue with the species, keep you alive so you can have babies, is the number one thing that the brain's trying to accomplish.
Yes.
Okay? It's not to make you happy. It's not to get you a bigger house. It's not to make you more money. Those are all things that are maybe needs of yours and goals, but that the brain
The
could care
ultimate
less.
primary objective is just to procreate.
Yeah, is to keep you alive so you can have babies. That's it. Okay.
Crazy.
So now, here's the important part. You ready?
Yes.
So every time that your brain sees a threat, and I'm not talking about just a physical threat, like a bear has you cornered, or there's a rattlesnake, or a car's about to hit you. I'm talking about
Yes.
anything that your brain
Perceived
feels,
as a threat.
perceives as a threat. It could be a social threat. It could be an ego threat. It could be a threat to your career, anything. Okay. As soon as that
Yes.
happens, guess what happens to the brain? It hunkers down,
What?
it hunkers down, and it says, okay, I don't care what else is going on in the brain. This is number one. I've got to resolve this threat.
Oh, wow.
So, what it does is it commandeers, summons resources from other parts of the brain, like the thinking part of the brain, the creative part of the brain, a lot of other parts of the brain. The resources are pulled into the survival network of the brain. And because that's the most important job.
Yes.
And what it does is because the resources have been pulled away, the other parts of the brain shut down. So now you can't think as well, you can't process as well, you can't be creative because all those resources have been pulled away
Yes.
until the brain resolves the threat. So, and then you're also because you're under threat, you're spending resources at 2 to 3 times the rate that you would if you were calm. So now you're blowing through resources, and the
Wow.
rest of your brain doesn't work as well, or it doesn't work at all. Okay, and so that's a performance problem, right?
Yes.
you can't you can't perform when you're under
Yes.
threat.
Yes.
You're when you're under threat. So one of the keys to brain management is examining every episode where the brain detects threat, interprets threat, and
Oh, wow.
asking it, is this really a threat?
Yes.
Is this really a threat? And do I want it to be a threat? If we can think about this now, if we can reinterpret a context, a situation that the brain
Yes.
interprets as threatening, and convince the brain by creating a new narrative about this context that teaches the brain this is not threatening, and then actually practice that new pattern, give the brain evidence like bringing the child to the pool, then all of a sudden,
Yes.
when it encounters that again in the future,
That
that
situation
context,
again.
it won't
Yes.
interpret it as a threat. So you can actually go through your life strategically, trying to resolve all the threatening moments that your brain perceives.
Oh, wow.
And guess
This.
what would happen to your performance?
Oh, wow. This is actually very much illuminating. And living in this modern world now with the internet and social media, there are so many things that, it isn't inherently a physical threat, but how do I put this? Back then, okay, it's kind of like this. You, let's say this is, we are hunter, we're still hunter gatherers, right? And this is like thousands of years ago. And you come in contact with a bear or a wolf and you feel scared, adrenaline is coursing through your blood and whatnot. The
Yep,
moment you're able to escape and you get to a place where you feel safe and you feel okay, your
yep,
your body starts to regulate itself and all. But nowadays, we always encounter lots of situations where it's not a bear, it's not necessarily a wolf, it's just a kind of situation, but the body goes into overdrive, adrenaline is coursing through your blood, and you never feel relaxed, essentially. You're always tensed every moment. Maybe it's your job, maybe it's your life. So I think this thing you mentioned, just observe the situation. Am I in any inherent danger? I am not. So let me just try, relax and just zen myself. And actually, this thing you just explained to us, this method you taught us right now, I think it's actually very important in everyday modern life because lots of tension. You go to the park, you board a bus, someone could be fighting you're going through a dark alley. There's just a lot of things to keep you tensed. There's war going on somewhere in the world. It affects your economy. You're thinking about your kids, you're thinking about your wife, and it's lots of things going on that can keep you tensed, keep you in that state of that perpetual state of survival mode. So you can actually just use this method and try to examine the situation and just think about it. Am I actually in any inherent danger? Is anything actually happening to me? Why don't I just relax and I think over time, like you said, productivity would actually increase and you'd actually feel more okay with life. Oh wow. Thank you so much for that,
so
George. That was
so
crazy.
there's two components. One is to try
Yes.
to calm down in the moment, but then the other is to analyze the situation, why your brain is
Yes.
interpreting it as threatening, and what story can you develop for your brain to teach it that the situation is not threatening, so that the brain reinterprets it, so the next time it comes upon it, it won't see it as threatening. Because you could go around your entire life putting band-aids on things, but the root cause never solves itself.
Yes.
So what we need to do is work with our
Wow.
brain to analyze all these moments of threat and decide, is it really threatening or not? Is it helpful or not to be this way? And if not, we have to then tell the brain a new story, but tell it to it over and over again until it has enough evidence. You can't just tell the brain one time and expect it to look at things differently. You actually, you
Yes.
can't tell it at all. You actually have to live the new experience. So the brain is not, just telling it something is not convincing enough. The brain is a
Yes.
little more discriminating than that. It wants you to feel differently. So if you can come upon that context and feel and think differently in the moment,
Yes.
then the brain begins to experience it and says, you know something? This new way of looking at this situation is better now. I can see how this new way is better. So I will adopt it and let the old one go away. And what you're really doing in the brain is you're developing a new neural pathway, new pattern.
Yes.
Neurons are firing together and connecting. And every time you do it, you strengthen it a little bit more and more until the brain has enough evidence. It's like you're in a courtroom and you need to convince the jury to convict. You need to give that brain enough evidence over and over again until it says, I'm gonna, the next time we encounter this, I'm gonna bring the new thing forward.
Yes.
That's not a threat. Okay?
Yes. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that clarification, George.
Yep.
Now, George, I wanted to ask you when it comes to, addiction and coping, you've been open about addiction. How does the brain create and reinforce addictive behaviors?
Yeah. Okay. Um, so um,
Yeah.
when the brain detects threat, perceives threat, interprets threat, um,
Yes.
we can feel, what would you call it? Anxious, emotionally reactive,
Yes.
uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the brain doesn't like that. It wants to get rid of it and bring balance back to itself, back to homeostasis, to,
Yes.
to calm. It's like a seesaw in the brain. The brain's always trying to level out. Okay. So at the moment, the brain is looking for a solution to figure out how to calm down. Once you start to teach it with drugs and alcohol or other behaviors that are addictive, scrolling on the phone, social media,
Yes.
um, gaming. Once you begin to teach it these tools and they work well to calm you down, guess what the brain wants to do every time you feel a threat?
What?
It's gonna go to the thing that solves the problem. And
Yes,
the thing
actually.
about addiction is that these behaviors and drugs and alcohol, substances, are so good, they're so effective at calming us down that the brain likes them a lot because the brain wants the easiest, most powerful solution to its activation that it can find. And
Wow.
so the problem is, like when you think about other things that we could do that aren't those things, like meditate, breathe, um,
Yes.
walk, yoga,
Yes.
exercise, okay? The brain
Yes.
looks at both of those alternatives and says, I could go get a drink, or I could go spend all the resources it's going to take to exercise.
Yeah.
Which do I think is easier and will do the job faster, quicker, and better?
Oh, wow. It's actually, the drinking. I think the brain is just trying to kind of be efficient.
Bingo,
But
bingo. That's it.
yes.
The brain's job is to keep you alive, keep you safe, predict threat, and
Yes.
do so efficiently because it has a limited amount of resources. It has to work
Yes.
24 hours a day, and it's always trying to figure out the quickest distance between point A and point B. So when you
Yes.
teach it over and over again that we can solve our anxiety problem with drugs and alcohol, it's like, yeah, baby, this is good. This is
Oh wow.
this is quick, it's efficient, and it's powerful. Why don't we just keep doing that?
Oh, now I get it why, it's so difficult for some people to, give up addiction because
Well,
it's yeah,
that's
please
part of
continue.
it. That's part of it. Then once you're in it, once you're in the cycle, and now you've developed this repeated behavior. Now
Yes.
all of a sudden, the you have put you when you do those behaviors and substances, you are putting more neurochemical in the networks in the system than it's designed to have. So it's basically like the brain is not designed to handle that much neurochemical repeatedly. And so it's like taking a fire hose to your backyard and watering your little flowers with it.
Oh, you're going to blow it away.
You're
You're
going to blow it
essentially
away.
going to destroy it.
100%. And so what happens is that you begin to damage the infrastructure of the brain and it starts to fail and it starts to dial itself back to protect itself.
Yes.
So then what happens is it stops producing dopamine for any other life activity because it just doesn't
Oh,
measure up to the substance.
yes, yes.
And so then we've elevated the dopamine levels. And then when we stop using the drug or the alcohol or the behavior, we come crashing down. And the only thing that the brain will accomplish that crashing down is withdrawal,
Yes,
like
yes, yes.
or being hungover. So I'm sure you've noticed, like maybe not you, but I know I did. You would get
Yeah.
you would get drunk, wake up the next day, hungover, and the first thing that would come to my mind is why don't I have another drink? Because it'll make the problem go away. And so that's what causes the repetitive addiction cycle where normal life pleasures stop working and you feel like crap. And so you want to do more to stop feeling like crap.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Oh wow. Oh, 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 oh. Honestly, this has been very enlightening, George. Thank you so much for that explanation. Damn. It makes a lot of sense now, honestly. Now, you talk about retraining the brain. How does neuroplasticity actually work in simple terms? In applying the concept of neuroplasticity and plasticity, how can one retrain the brain to kind of like get rid of these addictive and coping behaviors?
Yeah. Um, so it's a combination. You have to do two things. One is you have to deal with the addiction itself, that pattern,
Yes.
and you simply have to stop doing it. Okay.
Yeah.
Because every time you do it again, that pattern gets stronger. The brain learns again that how effective it is. And so it just gets strong. It's like going to the gym and working out a specific muscle. It just gets
Yes.
stronger and stronger and stronger. Same things with the patterns in your brain. Okay. So
Yes.
you have to create physical distance between yourself and that habit. Okay. And then over time, you know, generally when you're addicted to something, you'll get through the physical part of the withdrawal, within 7 days to 14 days. You start to feel better in a month. You get through the psychological part of the addiction, anywhere between 90 days and a year.
Yes.
It be okay. Meanwhile, um, there were reasons why you started using those drugs and alcohol or behaviors in the first place.
First place. Yeah.
And that's because something else was uncomfortable within you and you chose to use drugs and alcohol to solve the problem. So now we have to go back to those underlying things that caused you to want to use drugs and alcohol in the first place and redesign those patterns to figure out what those patterns were trying to do. What were they trying to accomplish? They didn't work very well because you felt emotionally reactive. And so we need to design new ones that will meet the needs better that the brain is trying to meet. Okay.
Oh wow,
That's a
yes.
whole nother layer of, you know, process that we have to go through.
Yes.
Now, the brain, um, just think of it as 85 billion cells, neurons, and they form together, they link together in communication by migrating
Yes.
towards each other and communicating with electrochemical signaling. And those represent our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors, all our mental life. And so they're just
Yeah.
littered throughout our brain. Everybody's brain looks different because we all have different past experiences and we all think a little bit differently and feel a little bit differently in different environments and contexts. Okay. So, but
Yes.
if those neurons came together to form patterns at one time, they're not stuck forever. They don't have to be. Now, the more time you do the same pattern over and over again, have the same
Yes.
thought, have the same emotion, they get stronger. But if you stop doing them, they would get weaker because you're not
Oh wow.
exercising them. It's like if you didn't go to the gym for a year, you would get weaker. If you don't think the same
Definitely.
thoughts and emotions for a year, they would get weaker. But the key is that you have to put an alternative in the place of the one you want to get rid of. So the brain can move, because otherwise the brain just spins out of control. You keep telling it, no, I don't want those bad thoughts and emotions, but you haven't given it anything better to reference. Okay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so we have to, whenever we want to get rid of something, we have to put something else in its place. And what we do is we design that. We say, okay, I'd rather think these things. I'd rather feel these things in response to this situation. And then we have to practice that. And then we have to feel how much better that is than the current one. And we have to invest in this new pattern. We have to train it. It's like going to the gym. It's very much like if we want to get physically fit, we have to go to the gym a lot. If we want to get mentally fit the way
Yes.
and have our mental experience be what we want it to be, we have to practice these new habits, these new patterns, and convince
Yes.
the brain that they're
So
better. Okay?
okay. Okay. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shakla. So this is essentially pattern engineering, a
Yes.
concept that you develop.
Yes. Bingo.
Oh wow.
Pattern re-engineering.
Oh, pattern re-engineering. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Now, for someone listening, someone that's, let's say someone that's listening to our conversation, they've been paying attention, aside, pattern re-engineering, what is there any other way that one can, rewire their brain? They can begin to retrain. Give them a beginning step into rewiring and retraining their brain today.
Well, the first thing I would do is to start looking at your brain differently. Um, you need to, we need to be convinced that the brain is not fixed. It can change. I assure you,
Yes.
myself as an example, and many other people like me that were in a bad place have re engineered their patterns to a better place. So nothing that occurs to you in your mental experience has to be that way. Okay. And so that is step
Yes.
one, is that awareness. So then we can start looking at the brain differently and objectively and start asking questions like, well, why did you bring me these thoughts and these emotions in this moment? Okay. And so just by
Yes.
questioning them, by questioning those thoughts and emotions, we are causing what we call a prediction error. And that means the brain was predicting that you should think these things and feel these things, but you have stopped it in its tracks and told the brain, no, I'm not going to think those things or feel those things. And so
Oh, wow.
that tells the brain it was wrong. And the brain doesn't like being wrong, it likes being efficient. So that is the
Yeah.
moment that you start creating learning opportunities for the brain where you can say that thought and be an emotion don't work. I'm not going to do those anymore. And that's where the brain will start to listen if we're calm about it and not anxious. If we're calm, you have to be calm for the brain to listen and learn something new because remember,
Yes.
When you're in threat, when the brain is in threat, it pulls all the resources away from the learning part of the brain. So the brain won't learn anything new. And so we have to be calm, analytical, objective. No, I don't like that thought. No, I don't like that emotion. And let me figure out what I would like to think and feel in this context and begin to practice that. And so by practicing, I mean not just when the context comes up again, but let's say you developed a morning ritual, which I highly recommend, where
Yes.
when you wake up, you go outside to start your circadian clock, let the sunlight soak in, and maybe you have your coffee in a quiet place for 10 to 15 minutes, and you have
Yes.
this one pattern that you'd like to re-engineer. And so you visualize the context, and then you say, okay, well, this is what was happening. I don't like it for these reasons. It's very costly. It has all these bad attributes. But here's the new one that I would rather have happen, and it has a bunch of really good attributes. So I'm going to spend time
Yes.
feeling, I'm going to rehearse. I am going to rehearse this new pattern. I'm going to visualize that I'm in this context, and here's how I would like it to go. And I'm going to feel good about it. I'm going to feel the goodness that comes from this new pattern and how much better I'm going to feel afterwards. How many resources I save. How much more productive I'm going to be by not having the reactivity.
Yes.
Okay? And so
Wonderful. Yes.
if you did that enough every day and you felt it, you have to feel it. The brain is always watching to see, is this meaningful to you or not, by how you feel. Okay? And so then if you stuck with it long enough, like you do at the gym, you don't expect you're going to
Yes.
get big muscles in a week or one day. You know that it's a lifestyle. And so if you created a 15-minute lifestyle for you every morning where you analyze bad patterns that you don't like and started developing new ones that you did like and practiced and rehearsed those,
Yes.
you will be amazed at how your life transforms.
Oh my God. Wonderful. Honestly, George, this has been a very enlightening conversation. I've really learned a lot about how my brain works and how to, make it work properly, make it work for me as opposed to working for itself or working for its primary objective, which is just to make me procreate. It's honestly been mind-boggling and, it's been crazy, man. Like a lot. Thank you so, so much. And I know that my listeners are right now, they are just their mind is blown away essentially. I have a set of rapid fire questions. Let's take a breather. You've given us platinum knowledge, platinum wisdom, lots of insights. So I want us to use these rapid fire questions to take a breather before we finally wrap up. So when it comes to okay, you can either answer with a phrase or a sentence, or you can pick. Both options are available. So let me start. So the first one is discipline or awareness.
Awareness. Can I add on to it or just the word? You would just want me to
Oh,
respond?
sure, sure, yes, definitely you can add on.
Okay, awareness, because discipline is a very expensive resource. That part of the brain that produces discipline or willpower is very expensive metabolically. And so we want to learn new patterns and commit them to default memory and have the brain just go to get them automatically. And so that we
Yes.
don't have to use discipline, we've ingrained them as habits. There's nothing to use discipline on.
Oh, wow. So essentially, instead of you trying to force yourself to do it, let it just become a habit
Bingo.
so that when you don't do
Bingo.
it, it now
Yep.
seems as if it's a problem. Oh, wow. Because, for example, now, there used to be a time back in school before I left school where I used to go to the gym. Anytime I missed the gym, I would always feel like I was going to fall sick or something. So, yeah. So I guess it's kind of like that, actually. Okay, wonderful. So the next one is stress or control. I mean, this is obvious, but anyways, you can answer.
Uh, yeah, I'd prefer calm or control. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing but by understanding the brain, you understand what stress is and why the brain summons it. And that helps to understand how to avoid it.
Wonderful. Eh, So, George, before we continue, I wanted to ask you, I hope the reception is good. I hope I haven't, my voice hasn't been shaky or anything.
No, it's been good. You cut out just a second, a minute ago. or 30 seconds ago, but other than that, it's been great.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Because I would love to upload on YouTube, and I don't want our listeners not to enjoy it, if you understand what I mean. So the next one is effort or alignment.
Alignment. Again, effort is highly
Yes.
expensive. Um, and the other thing that the brain is doing, in addition to keeping you safe so you can have babies, is it's always trying to
Yeah.
meet your need. It's trying to meet your psychological needs. And there's six of them that every human being
Yes.
has. Okay. And so in
Okay.
order to achieve coherence, calm, kind of floating through life, you need to we need to help the brain meet our needs efficiently. Okay. And that's alignment. That's when all of our
Yeah.
thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are in alignment. They're allowing the brain to meet the needs efficiently. And that's when you feel
Yes.
weightless. Okay. So alignment
Wow.
100%.
Please, these six psychological needs, can you like state them out first?
Autonomy, equality,
Yes. Wow.
stability,
Yes. Very important.
skillfulness, significance,
Definitely.
and togetherness. Your
Oh wow.
entire life, your brain is trying to meet those six needs.
Wow. That's
Okay.
actually amazing. Yes.
Now each person, we all have each six, but each one of us ranks them a little differently. And when I say rank, we are wired in a certain way through genetics plus our exposure to the
Culture.
environmental conditioning to
Yes.
have certain ones mean more to each individual than others. So we each have our own mapping. Okay. And the way you
Yes.
test it is you say, if I didn't have this, how reactive would my nervous system be? In other words, what kind of vitriolic reaction would my system have if I didn't have one of these? So, for example, let's say that autonomy was your number one need. And if you didn't have it, your nervous system would go haywire. Like
Oh.
you go through the roof. So then, um, let's say that you had a job and your boss was micromanaging you deep in your business. You had no autonomy. What do you think your brain would do?
It's just going to, haywire, chaos.
Bingo. It'll have a hell of a lot of friction. Emotional, we might identify it as emotional reactivity, a lot of
Yes.
anxiousness. And that's because our brain is what we have identified, we are programmed to need autonomy, but we're not getting it. Our need is not being met in that context.
Oh, wow.
And so if we want to live a frictionless, peaceful, calm life in alignment that you just said, we have to
Yes.
find our context meet our needs for autonomy. So it may
Oh,
mean that we're in the wrong job. We
yeah.
need to
Yeah.
find a new situation, a new boss, become an entrepreneur. That's why I became an entrepreneur. I have a very high
Wonderful.
need for autonomy, and I don't like working for other people. I tried it.
Honestly,
I went
honestly,
haywire. Okay.
honestly, I don't like someone being in control of my time when I sleep, when I wake up. Oh my God. Honestly, yes, I'm very much like you, George. I used to work for a boss. We actually had a big fight before I left the company, so you can imagine. Like he was so, in fact, oh my God, it's just crazy. But I'm very much like you. I don't like someone being in control of my time. I for example, because of having tried entrepreneuring and other sources of income where it's all in my control, I've been opportune and be able to do this podcast and of course talk with you today, which is wonderful. Honestly, George, this has been a very powerful and eye-opening conversation about performance, neuroscience, and how we can take control of the systems that drives our lives. Honestly, this is the reason why I opened this podcast in the first place, to meet wonderful people like yourself and learn a lot. Everything you've taught me today, I've never heard about it before, and I am absolutely blown away. And so you've essentially not through, the usual kind of motivation method we usually where they try to motivate, you can do this. It's the world is your oyster. Nah, you've used just pure science, things that are actually from empirical evidence. You've been able to convince me to take charge of my life and work towards my goals, work towards my own autonomy. I don't know how to plan and organize myself. When I'm going through the ropes and I'm going through something, I can essentially sit down, self-analyze and using your methods and understand what exactly is happening to me, what is causing whatever I'm experiencing or feeling, and how I can, not just being able to identify a problem alone, also being able to solve it. And honestly, if anything, this is supposed to be a paid session. Honestly, I'm supposed to pay you for that. I'm going to pay you by making sure I get this video to as many people as I can. I include all your websites and where they can reach you on the show notes. It's been such a pleasure to have you. Now, before we finally wrap up, where can my listeners, learn more about your work and possibly connect with you, George?
Yeah, best place is georgehaymaker.com. That's my name.com. GeorgeHaymaker.com. That has all the links in it. You can set up a free call to talk to me for 30 minutes about what's going on in your life to see if we are a good fit to work together.
Yes,
Yeah, that's the best way to find me.
it's
Or follow
wonderful.
me on
Once again,
LinkedIn also at George
okay,
Haymaker.
okay. Once again, George, it's been such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your insights, and of course, your expertise. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Hello?
And yes, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me, George? Hello, George, can you hear me? Let me try some. Oh, okay. Hello, George, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I'm still
gotcha.
here.
Yep.
Okay, okay, okay. So, I was just wrapping up. I was saying thank you so much for coming on my podcast, enlightening us. Like I said, this is supposed to be a paid session. Honestly, I feel like paying for this because I've learned a lot. And thank you once again. And please do have a wonderful day. Take care of yourself. And of course, say hello to your dogs for me.
Yeah. Hey, will I get a copy of this and how soon?
Yes, definitely, definitely. When I upload, I will definitely, notify you that I've uploaded. And if you want a copy, of course, yes.
Yeah, I'd like the raw copy if I can, so I can put it, because I like the way that this went. I like how I like the way I spoke and I like the way you handled it and asked questions. So I'd like to repurpose this. If you can give me the
Okay, okay,
raw
okay.
file.
I'm going to arrange it, and I'm going to I think there's a way I can do it. I'll set a website where you can download it from. I think I can do that. Yes. So definitely yes. Just let me know. Just let me know when do you need it.
Well, as soon as possible.